Imu seems almost obsessed with Queen Lili and has explicitly ordered the Gorosei that he or she, hard to say currently, wants Vivi, and they better make sure to deliver. And that already brings us to a good point. If we consider that Imu can use Gunko like some kind of vessel, a truly grim fate looms on the horizon for Vivi if Imu gets their hands on her. So let's roll this whole topic back from the beginning and think about what Imu might want with Vivi. I'd actually start this whole thing with a passage from the Harlay. I've discussed it several times. I strongly believe the following passage refers to the moment when Imu and the Gorosei received their demonic abilities. Second Age. The god of the forest sowed demons, while the sun ignited the flame of war. With the sun, it's pretty likely that either Joyboy is directly meant, or the infinite energy source that was on Joyboy's side, meaning the ancient kingdom created it, and Joyboy came from this kingdom. We also know the ancient kingdom stood in opposition to the founders, just like Joyboy. Now this whole thing with Imus could basically go in two directions. It could be that the god of the forest gave demonic abilities to Imu and the other founders and put Imu at the top, or that he himself is the top, meaning that Imu and the god of the forest are ultimately one and the same. Of course, Oda could play with this and, let's say, refine it. Maybe the god of the forest simply uses Imu as a vessel, much like Gunko currently plays that role for Imu. At the current point, it's hard to determine, but at least one thing is striking. Nirona Imu is said to be the name of one of the founder kings, and Imu still refers to themselves as Imu, or, more precisely, as Mudu. That already suggests that the founder king Nirona Imu is currently in control. But is it theoretically possible that the god of the forest has always been Nirona Imu, or that he just uses Imu as a vessel? And Imu has no more idea about this than Gunko seems to in her normal form. And while we're on the topic of Imu's vessels, it's only logical that Imu has or at least had other vessels besides Gunko in the past. After all, Gunko seems about 20 years younger than Brook. Brook is 90, so let's assume she was born 70 years ago. She doesn't seem to have been very old when Imu took control of her, but I'd still estimate her as a young adult. Since we're working with rough estimates anyway, let's say she was 20 years old when Imu took her, meaning Imu has had her as a vessel for 50 years. The Void Century lies 800 years in the past. In the 750 years before that, Imu almost certainly had at least one other vessel. The question is, which vessel? First, another question, does Imu currently still have his original body? If the Founder King is in control, I'd say he could very well still possess his original body. But if the god of the forest is in control, I wouldn't be surprised if he's instead using the body of the then Founder King. Either way, this body would presumably be the one we've often seen as a silhouette. However, there's also another possibility. Let's come to Queen Lili. Queen Lili was supposed to be one of the founders, but she refused to become a celestial dragon. No wonder, since she was secretly working with Joyboy. Still, that means she had a certain relationship with the other original founders, and that includes Nirona Imu himself, even if that relationship may have been completely deceived. Now, we know that Lili simply disappeared at the end of the Void Century. She refused to become a celestial dragon, sent a letter back to Alabasta, and then vanished without a trace. She could theoretically have done anything. There's an interesting theory that she was the founder of Amazon Lili. But what if instead she became one of Imu's vessels? I think we absolutely need to consider this possibility, and perhaps she even served a different function than Gunko, or rather, I should say that she had a different function. When Imu took over Gunko's body, her hair grew. On one hand, this hairstyle resembles the hair state Gunko had when she was a bit younger, maybe the state she was in when Imu took her over. On the other hand, the hairstyle resembles that of Queen Lili. Coincidence? Maybe, maybe not. What if Nirona Imu's original body was somehow destroyed, maybe by Joyboy, leaving Imu no choice but to permanently take over a new body? We've seen that Gaban could bypass Summer's regeneration. I do think there's theoretically a way to heal Summers again, but what if the ability Gaban used was on an even higher level, such that Joyboy injured Imu with it? I mean, Joyboy is quite a bit stronger than Gaban, especially Gaban at his current age. It's not that unlikely. I think it would be quite possible to create a situation where Imu simply had no other choice but to take a new body. In that case, the question would have been, which body should he take over? How convenient would it be if one of the designated founders, for some reason, decided against becoming one of the celestial dragons? And if that person had previously made a big mistake, a mistake that led to the poneglyphs being scattered across the world? If Imu, independently, had already developed a certain obsession with this person, well, couldn't it be that Imu was forced to take a new body, and Lili simply offered herself as the perfect vessel. Even if Nerona Emu was originally male, he could have chosen Lili as his vessel. In that case, it would also make sense why Emu has a portrait of Queen Lili in his flower chamber, quite simply because Emu controls Lili's body. It wouldn't just be a portrait of Lili, but, in a way, also one of Emu himself. Now you might naturally ask why Cobra didn't react more to Emu's appearance, if Emu resembles Lili so much. The thing is, we can't say for sure that Cobra even got a good look at Emu. I mean, Emu seems to wear clothing that hides their appearance, and on top of that, there was a certain distance between them. Plus, we don't know if Emu's form wasn't perhaps transformed in some way from the start. But if Emu is currently inside Lili's body, what role does Vivi play in all of this? We've already established that the resemblance between Vivi and Lili is enormous. If we now assume that Emu has been inside Lili's body for 800 years, but once before lost a body, their original body, wouldn't it make sense that Emu simply wants Vivi as a backup body? Quite simply because Vivi's body is so similar to the body Emu has been living in for 800 years, I think that's a very plausible reason for Emu's interest. I mean, under the premise that Nerona Emu was male, but then took over Lili's body and lived in it for 800 years, it's also quite interesting that Emu now uses Gunko as a vessel, who is also female. In other words, perhaps Emu simply got used to having a female body. And in fact, I find the introduction of Gunko here on Elbaf to be an interesting timing. Vivi was with Big News Morgans for a while, and might still be there for some time, making her relatively safe. But sooner or later, Oda will bring her back into the focus of the story and reunite her with the Straw Hats. The question is, in what way will she meet the Straw Hats? Or will she perhaps fall into Emu's hands and need to be rescued? I think both options are fundamentally possible. However, I think it's much more likely that she'll meet the Straw Hats and perhaps need to be defended, rather than having to be rescued out of Emu's clutches. Why let Vivi escape at the reverie, only to have Emu capture her a little later, without Vivi having done anything major? I think it's more likely that here on Elbaf, the danger will be established, the danger that Emu could get hold of Vivi. It would be super interesting if Vivi appears here on Elbaf, and it becomes completely clear what Emu intends to do with her. That wouldn't just put Elbaf in danger, it would also give the Straw Hats a direct reason to fight against the world government. I mean, if one of their dearest friends is directly targeted by the leader of the world government, that's a pretty good reason to stand up against them, right? Granted, the reason would be even more intense if they actually managed to capture Vivi and the Straw Hats found out about it. But somehow, I doubt that Vivi's fate will turn out that way, even though it's possible. Also, if she were to fall under Emu's control, is there even a way to save her? That question first comes up regarding Gunko, especially when you consider the age factor. I mean, ultimately, it wouldn't just be about pulling her out of Emu's clutches, but also making sure she doesn't suffer the same fate as Saturn. We have to keep in mind that she should now have been alive for roughly 70 years, meaning, would she age the same way as Saturn? I mean, she probably wouldn't turn into a skeleton, but she would still age very, very rapidly. Ultimately, we still know too little about Emu's abilities to say for sure what exactly killed Saturn. Did Emu drain his lifespan? Did Emu take away his regeneration? And the lost time caught up to him? So it's hard to say what would happen to Gunko if the control were ever fully broken. If Emu had simply drained lifespan, then Gunko should be relatively okay, as long as she's once pulled out of Emu's clutches. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments. If you have any further questions, feel free to drop them in the comments as well. For now, I'm sending you over to another video of mine that I can warmly recommend. With that said, goodbye and see you next time.